everyone. I'm Linda Nickell, and welcome to the Happiness Hour. My goal here is to help us all connect, inspire, and create. And every week, the new speaker is here to share a bit of inspiration, creativity, and their interpretation of photography. If you haven't checked out the schedule for our upcoming presentations, be sure to check out the list on my website at lindanickell.com. Elaine Pruden is here to help me stay on track and is working on setting up the Happiness Hour community blog. So if you'd like to participate, please check out the details under Happiness Hour on my website. Say hello, Elaine.
Hello, everybody.
My guest tonight is Don Simpson, a photography instructor and lecturer who is a founding member of the Art Attack photography group. Don has developed a large number of photography workshops that range from special techniques to presentations on general topics relating to the art of photography. In tonight's presentation, The Art of Scanography, Don will show us how a color flatbed scanner can produce high resolution and quality fine art pieces. He'll walk us through the basic settings for your scanner, show you some handy tools you'll need, and how to assemble your project. So welcome to the Happiness Hour, Don.
Thank you.
So Don attended one of our presentations, and afterwards he sent me a note and said, I do a lot of presentations, and he gave me a whole list of things that he has done over the last few years. And said, hey, if you're interested in maybe me doing a presentation, I'd love to do it. And I'm never gonna say no to anybody that says, I know something, let me show you something. So Don, when you did that, I was like, yes. And so when you and I met, you started listing off all of these different techniques that, to be honest, I had never heard of. I had heard of scanography, but there were, I can't even list them, several different things that you mentioned. And my head was just kind of spinning because I felt very greedy because I wanted you back more than once. And so, and I'm going to cheat and say, you and I have already talked, you're going to come back in, I believe, July to do another presentation. But tonight I thought this would be a great opportunity to look at something completely different from photography. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to you. If I didn't, say something that you'd like for us to know about you, please, feel free to add that to your intro.
No, that's fine. I'm really a co-founder of Art Attack. Sue Poots, it's on the call here, was one of the three of us that started the group. Other than that, I probably teach more about photography than I shoot myself. Kind of health has held me back a little bit, but I've been doing this a long time, since I grew up in Rochester, New York, at the foothills of Eastman Kodak, and everybody in our community worked for Kodak. I've been around photography for a long time. But I didn't really start seriously until about 2007. And I was lucky to team up with a 50-year veteran professional photographer, and we hit it off really well. So I spent 3 hours a week minimum with him for 7 months. And then he let me go out on some professional shoots with him. If I would carry some of his equipment, he'd teach me how to use it. So he's the one that really got me going. But can we kick right into it?
Just jump right in.
Everybody see that all right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, one of the things I wanted to say up front is a lot of people don't really understand scanography. And if you do a lot of search on the internet, you're going to see usually a bunch of clowns putting their head on copy machines and calling that scanography. I decided to take it more as a serious art form. And I like people to think of it as a digital pinhole camera. It's got a fixed aperture, a reasonably fixed shutter. It can vary a little bit, but it's based on the resolution that varies the speed. And the light is constant. And so if you think of letting light into the picture, the shutter bar starts, the light bar starts up at the top of the thing and comes down. So that's your shutter speed. That's the only time it's being exposed to light. And probably we all know from our regular photography that large light sources relative to a subject make for very soft light. And so the shutter bar, the light bar, is going to cover the whole glass. So it's much larger than anything you have on the glass. And the second thing is that the closer your light source is to the subject, and the bigger that light source is, the softer the light. It's counterintuitive to people, but when you shoot portraits, that's why lights are very close to models and things, because they want big boxes really close. And if you think of the sun up in the sky, what's the harshest light out there? You know, afternoon, noon to 3 o'clock. And if you can put your thumb up there and cover the moon or the sun, which you can, that means that that is a small light source at that time. But when you come down with the sun, either first thing in the morning or last thing at night, that light source gets so big you can't cover the moon or the light. I always want to say moon, the sun with your thumb. So that's proof positive. The old adage about the golden hour, that's kind of why. So the soft light and the incredible ability for you to shoot photographs in unbelievable resolutions, so that I can take something that's on a small scanner bed and I could blow it up big enough to cover a wall in my house, and it would be at least 300 DPI, maybe bigger. That's the advantages I see. So it's not, most of what I'll probably show you tonight, if I remember right, is related to floral photography, but you're not related to that. You can use the crayons with the Roy G. Biv. You can use shells, rocks, bowls. There's a lot of things that you can do, and I'll show you some of that. So, you know, traditional uses of a scanner are making copies and faxing and converting paper documents and converting images from photos, slides, and negatives into something digital. So how I found out about it, because I'd never heard of it either, is I have a son that lives in California as well. And I went out there and he had bought tickets for me to go to the Sonoma County. All the pro photographers were having open houses. So I went, and the first guy I ran into, I looked at his photography and I couldn't figure out how he could have possibly done it. So I begged and pleaded with him that I'm from Texas. I'm not going to be a competition. And so he said, all right, it's not too busy here right now. And he took me into his studio and he took me over in the corner and he said, well, that's the camera I use. And I said, that looks like just an old scanner. He said, bingo. And he spent about an hour with me giving a few tips and tricks. And after going to about 10 photographers, the last guy I went to was also a scanographer. So I started playing around with it. This is about maybe 7 or 8 years ago. Got to the point where I felt I was competent, and then my mind said, okay, I'm ready to go on to the next thing. And then recently I picked it up again because I got interested in something else that I'll talk about later that is a great lead-in to other things you can do with photography. So that's what all this stuff says. Now, don't laugh. These next few slides are actually quite important, not as a piece of art, but the first thing you need to do is, can my scanner have much of a depth of field? The CCD scanners are the best as far as depth of field goes. If you've just got an all-in-one printer, you're probably not going to be satisfied with anything because they have a very narrow depth of field. So what they suggested you do is take fruit or vegetables or something when you get home, throw them on a scanner and just see if they give you reasonably good depth of field all the way through. On my scanner, typically, I'm running about 3/4 of an inch in perfect focus above the glass. And then the other thing you want to look for is color reproduction, because there are settings on here that can alter that reality. So I use this test and these things look real and they look like I could have taken them with a camera in the same position. The next thing I wanted to do was some scans, and I wanted to look at focus. So if you look at the flower in the upper left corner, you can see that there's very good focus right into the detail of that flower. And then I wanted to start saying, okay, what can I do for compositions? How do I set up a composition, which I'll get into how you do it because it's different than you might think. And I just threw an old black velvet cloth over the top to add some texture in the background just for fun. So again, you can see great texture, good focus, great color reproduction. And so this was actually my first two, well, next to the vegetables, my first two scans ever. And I was pretty impressed. But without that hour help from that guy, I think I would have struggled for a little while. Then I went in to look at texture and detail. And so if you see the petunias up there, the texture in there is pretty phenomenal. Again, the focus is good. These are bungee cords to the right, and you can actually see right into the fibers and see some of the dust particles and maybe sand or whatever was in them in there. So I thought, well, wow, you can really pick up detail, texture. This has actually got some potential. So then I said, okay, how do I get black backgrounds and white backgrounds and different things like that? It's really easy to get black backgrounds, and almost anybody that you find in the on the internet is going to have black backgrounds because they kind of come for free. Getting other colors a little more different, because you know if you take this is a white piece of printer paper, it's going to turn to 15% gray if you don't light it. And since it's further away from the light than the flower itself, it turns to 15% gray. So a little later, I'll share with you how you can do some of this other stuff, but at least it told me what I could or couldn't do. One of the things you need to do, at least what I recommend, is building your composition on the table next to the scanner, because you actually have to put it on the scanner in mirror image, basically upside down and swapped. You've got to be really careful not to scratch or break the glass. These are stones. They're not small stones. They're big enough to break the glass or scratch it. So you got to carefully place things. And if you learn how to do it, you can get the three-dimensional thing. That's why I stuck the feather in there, is to give dimension to this. So I assemble the entire thing on the desktop, and then I'd bring one piece at a time over to the glass. And we'll get into a step-by-step here in a little bit. Then I wanted to say, what can I do with movement on this screen? So I robbed one of my wife's flowers that probably some other guy gave her, but they were getting dead. So I kind of pulled off stuff and put it in a pile and just threw it on, and that's the left scan. And I said, okay, so there could be interesting things if I went in with a pair of tweezers and started just pulling a few things out and laying them someplace. I could make this look like a real windy day, or just leaves falling from a tree or a plant, including any dust particles or any remnants left over from the plant. So you could make some of these things look alive. I'll show you a photo later on where a person had caterpillars and butterflies and everything else. And you can do quite a lot of interesting work. These are the people who kind of introduced me and inspired me to this art. Peter Crone was the first gentleman I met. This is all happening basically upside down from your eyes, but there's a kind of a clever way to learn what that composition looks like. This is probably my personal favorite artist I've seen. I also met him on the gallery tour. I think this is clearly a fine art piece. It's pretty simple, but it's elegant. The colors are beautifully, he's really done a nice job. And, you know, people will think of this different because everything's laying on a flat table. I can't just put this up in a stand and shoot it with the camera. I'd have to be pointing down, but on the scanner, I don't have to set up any equipment. I can reach my scanner from where I'm sitting, and little techniques, which I'll talk to you about later. But like this one, I would probably put a drop from a hot glue gun on that spoon, just set that thing in there, set it on the side of the scanner, make any adjustments I need, shoot it, and a couple minutes later, I'd be done. So you can do some pretty nice stuff. He also did this stuff, which I liked from his work. I copied the yellow rose because I did one as well. And he got into some of the, I can't think of the name of the shells out in California. Just turned it upside down on a flower inside. So you can do some pretty cool thing. I do floral photography, frozen in ice. And if you haven't done that before, there's a technique for freezing things in ice that will give you all the cracks and bubbles and cool stuff. But typically I've done it with my camera. So I'm probably going to just make one of those things and throw it on the scanner and see where it goes, because the light's going to come from below. So you're going to get good light into the scene. I really liked this one as well, but it's a very simple composition. Somebody told me those were sweet peas. I don't know, but just a shell. Again, you could use a dot of glue that could not be seen. Stick this on the shell, turn it upside down, and she's got a piece of black fabric of some type that she could crumple up to give you texture and stuff in the background. So beautiful. I mean, the color, it's incredibly sharp. You can also do liquid stuff. I've never tried this personally, but as you can see, you need to put some packing tape or something around the edge. So just in case anything were to leak, it wouldn't go into the scanner itself. And she also uses a second piece, like a piece of a glass front to a photo or something there to shoot her things. It's not my fondest thing, but I wanted to throw it in there just so you could see that you could do those kinds of things. This one I'm probably be the next one I tried, because I thought this was fascinating, trying to figure out how they did this, because it looks like those objects are floating in air. That part I know what they did, because they just set them on the scanner. And it looks like a flashlight with maybe a gel on it held just above the surface at an angle to make it appear that it's the background. And so I think I know how to do it, but I haven't tried it yet. So what's required to do this kind of stuff? Obviously you need a scanner. I use an older Epson V500 photo scanner. If you're okay with Epson products, the 550, the 600, and the 650 are also really good for this. But make sure that it's a CCD scanner, because there's a couple of different types. And as far as I know, and the experts I've seen, they're all shooting with these kind of scanners because they feel they have the greatest depth of field. And that's pretty important. Obviously, you need a peripheral USB cable, which usually comes with the scanner, and you need some kind of software. Sometimes they come with a scanner and sometimes they don't, or sometimes you want to buy one that might be better. The one that came with my scanner is called Epson Scan, and so far I haven't found a single thing I wanted to do I can't do with it, and it was free, so it's perfect. I'll show you a little bit about how you set that up. It might be helpful, it's not a requirement, to have scissors, maybe a glue gun, masking tape, we'll use that tonight. Soldering helping hands, if you've never used these kind of things before, where you can bend them and hold things in place. I can set that beside the scanner like on a book at the same level, and I can then suspend objects above the glass, because one of the things that people usually ask me is, don't you, when you shut the lid to the scanner, doesn't it crush the subjects? Well, obviously, I don't even keep a lid on my scanner. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But these things I've found helpful along the way to do certain things, and I'll call some of them to your attention as we go through it. So the scanner lid, no, it's not closed. It's either, if you can't take it off, which most of the new ones you can, you just pull it up and take it off. Then open it as far as it will go and stay by itself, which is usually 90 degrees, and just leave it open. There is a book depth on most of the newer scanners. Nope, I don't do that either. So that was intended to make copies of books, with the splines open. You could do that, but you're not going to have much room to create your stuff. So I just leave it open, or I remove it. And I remove it. The background colors, if you want black, take the cover off, be in a reasonably dark room, like after dark, with only the lights while you're creating your composition and stuff. Because the depth of field and the light fall off happens fairly rapidly, you get a pure black background for free. You don't have to do anything to do it. White, I was trying to think one day of an easy way to do it than trying to do it in post-processing. And I'm on my way to light pad photography. And I thought I could use this as my margin between scanography and shooting translucent floral photography on a light pad. So I got this idea of taking just some kids' blocks, like just regular little square blocks, one in each corner, and I took the light pad and turned it upside down. So now you've got the perfect white, bright light shooting down on the back of the subject, so you're getting rim lighting. But you're also, the camera that's underneath the glass that's moving is seeing a bright white background. So it works wonderful. I'll show you a picture at the end that will kind of show you that. For me, that means I could actually do my translucent photography on a scanner and just at the last moment, put the light pad on top. And I think I could accomplish the same thing, even though if I want to shoot with my regular camera and tripod and stuff, there's other ways to do it. And there's some really good people on the internet to help you along the way. I learned it from a 3-day workshop at the top of the mountains in Virginia from Robert Llewellyn. I spent 3 days with him. And he's unbelievable. If I want to get into doing textures or changing background colors or anything like that, there's ways you can do it on here, but I find it just too much work. I'm lazy. I can do all that work in Photoshop using layers, and it's pretty straightforward. And there's ways that you can actually use the scanner to make those backgrounds. So it's not that you have to take a picture with them. You could actually create backgrounds you'd use in your real photography or in scanography right on this desktop. You can make some very unusual backgrounds. The glass platen, you need to clean it good before every scan because glass is like a magnet to dust. I usually use an eyeglass quality liquid that I can spray on a lint-free cloth to clean it. Just be really careful not to scratch the glass. That's the only thing. About once a year, I actually take the glass off the scanner so I can clean the underside because they're not perfectly airtight underneath there. But if you've got a pretty new one, watch your warranty before you do it because most of them say if you take the glass off, your warranty's void. Well, my scanner's like 8 years old, so I don't care. You just got to be careful, but it's not hard. It's like 4 screws and it lifts off and you clean it like you would if you're getting ready to frame something. Put it back on and you're in business. You're not having to disconnect wires or any of that kind of stuff. How do I make sure I get a well-lit photograph and I want a principally black background? I made a box. The box is the size of the scanner bed. So I can turn it over and lay it right down on the scanner. That traps any ambient light from getting in. Only the light inside the box will light the subject. Because I couldn't go out to stores and buy flat black paint, I used a black matte. I think the flat black paint would work better. I just still can't go into the stores to get it. So, but it works pretty well. And I'll show you the very last one. I'll show you a picture of what it would look like coming off the scanner and what about 2 or 3 minutes in Photoshop turns it into. So if you're going to put scratchable things on your scanner, you might consider putting a clear plastic laminate sheet to protect the glass. For me, I abandoned that because I never could find that clear plastic laminate sheet that didn't have some kind of noise embedded into it. But some of these other scanners do that. I just haven't picked the right stuff, I guess. You can build a light tent or get different covers to place over the objects. We talked about the one that I use, but you can put all kinds of different color fabrics and things. Just know that it's not going to show up much unless it's within that first inch. If you put something way up high, the scanner's light's falling off too much by the time you get there. I've also found that when you're shooting delicate flowers, just the weight of that flower laying it on the glass will tend to crush things so they don't look natural. So you can suspend those so that they barely touch the glass or they're barely above the glass, using like a monofilament fishing line or those soldering helping hands that I showed you, which is mostly what I use, so that you can get some spectacular photos. It's like, if you just laid it on there, it'd crush and it wouldn't look good at all, but that works. And then you got gravity working for you as well. And I leave the lid off anyways. So next to the scanner, you should collect objects you wish to use to create a composition. Create the composition next to the scanner. Move one object at a time, placing it upside down on the scanner glass. And you continue until your composition is complete. The problem is you can only see the back side of the composition. So you power up your scanner, connect it to your already powered computer, execute the software, and we're going to have you set some settings. Your scanner software, if it's different, may look like this, but this is the kind of things that you would want. So if we start at the very top, for Epson, they have like a professional mode and a default mode, I think they call it. You want to go to the professional mode because that opens up all these tools down here that you could use while you're scanning. Obviously, it's a reflective off the document table, not off a feeder, and we're doing photography. Down here is the part that most people struggle with a little bit. But if you have the capability of editing 16-bit color, then you should pick 48-bit color because that's the red, green, and blue channels, each at 16-bit. If not, then you shoot 24-bit, which is 8-bit channels. But if you're looking for the best color resolution and stuff, 48-bit's the correct thing to do. When you're sizing your photo, there's two main ways that you can accomplish something. One is think about what you want your finished resolution to be, which many of us use 240 to 300, but we'll say 300 for math reasons. So I'm saying I want them to scan this photo at 600 DPI. What does that mean? In post-processing, I can go into something like Photoshop, and I can downsize the PPI, if you will, from 600 to 300, and that allows the picture to be twice as big as it was on the scanner. So if I'm scanning things where I want to get a big picture off, I usually scan them at 1200, and now I can go 4 times bigger than my scan. And the scanner, I think my scanner goes up to, I don't know, over 10,000, and it's pretty old. So I can scan things big enough to get to walls. Another way you can do it is using the target size, and that works off percentages. So you could say, I want my finished resolution to be, say, 300, but I don't want to have to do this stuff in Photoshop. Just scan or do it for me. And I could come down here and say, okay, I want the I want it to be 400%. What it'll automatically do is adjust all these sizes for me in here. It'll give me the 300, but it'll give me a file that's already sized really large. So that will be the place where it takes a little trial and error to fully understand it. But it works, and I've used both of them. They work equally well. These tools I don't use a lot, but you can open them up and do different things with them to adjust the lighting while you're taking the scan. And I've played with them. Man, there's some interesting things because you got a standard light source moving across your subject. If you don't do something, then it's going to be, everything's perfectly lit. So if I want to bring the light down a little bit because I have an object that might reflect a little bit of light, I can do that. If I wanted to make it a little brighter because I'm trying to get into deep like a bowl, which I'll show you, then I can bring the light up a little bit. So there's things you can do right inside. You can also go into target sizes and pick some of the standard sizes, and it'll make sure that it'll do all the adjustments automatically. So, I mean, this is pretty much, once you get it set up, you're pretty much set, except for varying maybe these sizes. Let's see if I got this on here. Yep. So this is what the whole screen looks like. But you'll see down here, there's a preview, and this, I don't know why they made it white, but it says scan. So when you're ready to scan, you can scan there, but you can do a preview scan, which will scan really fast. So if you're looking at compositions, that's what I recommend. Set your composition on, do a preview. You'll see it instantly on your computer screen, and you can say, oh, I got to make this little adjustment. And you just keep doing that until you've got the composition you want. And then you click this. You can go into some of the tools like auto exposure levels and gammas and all that stuff if you're into it to figure it out. But typically when you say scan, this is the screen that comes up. And it's just basically saying, where would you like to store, what folder would you like to store the photo in? What would you like to have the name of that file be? And then they will tack a number on the back. You can start it back at 001, but I do this all the time. I touch that mouse, it goes wild. So it'll be like Simpson 001, and then I get to pick what my image format is. Do I want TIFF? Do you want JPEG typically? There's PDF and other things as well, but I usually use TIFF. A 48-bit photo saved into a TIFF file will give you extremely close to raw images coming off a camera. So you have a lot more pixels to work with in your post-processing. And that's about it. You click OK, it does the scan. It saves the image that in your name, wherever you told it to store it. I can instantly see it and still make adjustments and reshoot it while I still have the composition open. These are just samples of other things you can do with histogram adjustments and tone curves. And I don't use them a lot. I'll do it in post-processing if I need. Just capture a really good raw-like image and you're about equal to coming off your camera. So my process then is after my composition's on the bed, I preview. So I click on preview, examine, and then fix the composition if I need to, and then repeat until I'm satisfied. The previews usually take about 30 seconds to take. So you're like 30 seconds between shots type of thing. So it's very fast. If you continue to do scan, those scans can take 1 to 10 minutes, depending on your resolutions. And so it would take forever. And you save your scans, but the previews aren't saved. So they're not eating up any space on your computer. You do have a choice, depending on what you're going to shoot off your scanner bed. You don't always have to shoot the whole bed. You only need to shoot what makes sense around the object. Like I'll say a rectangular crop, like a 5x7 on a flower or something. So you can go in and select the dotted line. You can just drag it down and select this area that you want to scan, and it'll ignore the whole rest of the bed. Makes the scanning go faster and makes the file be a lot smaller. Like I said, you can do some sharpening on here if you want. You can do the red, green, blue corrections, brightness and contrast, saturation and color balance, and you can play with them. I've used them a few times on things that I found more difficult, but I normally leave them all at default. And I've already mentioned this about a 16-bit image, meaning 48-bit on all the channels combined, is roughly equivalent of a raw photo. It's incredible. I'm not sure if I can shoot that sharp off my camera. It's incredibly good. So when you're ready to create your image, you click the scan button, enter your file name, your file type. Can take from 1 to 10 minutes. The file could be really big, 30 to 300 meg. I've even had them over half a gig. That's just the raw file to work with once you've done all your things with it and you scale it back down, because you're not necessarily scanning at 1200. You're only going to reduce it down to 300. So then the files shrink down to normal like you get with your camera. You can scan directly into your computer. I mean, you can scan into a Photoshop or Lightroom, so you don't even have to bother with anything. You're ready to, you can just scan right in and work on your image right away. So here's one of my compositions. The Texas purple flowers were in beautiful bloom on the side of my house, and the knockout roses were in good bloom. So this is all just laid right on the scanner bed. A couple of previews to get it where I wanted it and shoot. And I wanted to show you, if I can, we'll see if I can. I'm going to go back out here because I want to, so I'm going to zoom in. As you've seen it zoom in, okay? So I'm going to get in here and give it the second, and you can see I'm really zoomed in here, and you can see the detail, taking a look at the pollen and stuff. It's extremely sharp. All right. This is an example I wanted to show you of a bowl. So I carved the spoons and used the lathe to make the bowls. But I said I just wanted to try something fun to see how much light I could throw, because it's close to 3 inches to the top of this bowl. So I said, I'll just throw some colorful flowers in and call it a bowl full of flowers. Now everything now is tipped upside down on the screen, but it was pretty easy to do this, but I turned the light levels up a little bit so I could get the light all the way to the bottom of the bowl. So you can do objects bigger than 3/4 of an inch just by altering the light. But tonight, for a demonstration, this is where I usually do live demos, but time doesn't permit that. We're going to make stone soup, which is even a simpler composition than this, but give you an idea. So beside my scanner, I lay objects. In this case, it's just going to be a stone and a spoon beside each other, so I can see kind of where I want the spoon to be. You can actually see a little bit of masking tape sticking through now. It won't be in the picture, but it's there. So you adjust that on the desk until you get it where you want it. And then you turn it upside down. And then again, I'm using, I don't want the spoon laying flat like this. I want it tipped into the bowl more. So I get it where I think I want it. I taped it off, and now all I got to do is carefully lay the bowl on top of those objects. I placed my box, my black box, over the top of the scanner, and you can see here that my scanner lid is just up perpendicular. And I did a preview scan, adjust, preview scan. When the scan's ready, I make my adjustments, and I just hit the scan button, and I would come out with something like that. So it's really thinking about compositions, laying them flat, and then being able to say, okay, the upper right corner isn't going to be the upper right corner when I turn it over. It's going to be the upper left corner. So it's a mirror image. So you have to, that takes a little practice if you're doing a complex scan to think about that. But the beauty of the preview is, in a few seconds, you're going to see exactly what you did, because you could do that as you're building it. These are just some simple florals. that I did. And I did those in, I'm not sure if they're all black, but it's just the simple black background. This one is suspended down, so it's not quite touching the glass, just laid on the scanner bed. There's my yellow rose laid on the scanner bed. And then I decided I wanted to encase it in glass. So I put the flower on the bed, then put a handkerchief around it, and then put a glass bowl on top of it. So you can get pretty creative. You can build some, you'll see some in a minute, some pretty complex arrangements here. But if you notice these, look at the resolution on these photos. They're phenomenal. I didn't have to do anything. There was no focusing I had to do. The scanner does all the work. And I could literally go out with a pair of scissors, clip the top of the rose, bring it in, put my lid up, put the thing on. I'm pretty much ready. Within a few minutes, I'll have that picture finished and I could be printing it. So this is an example. It wasn't intended as a piece of art. A lot of the photos that I take are for purposes of teaching, not for purposes of displaying. This was my test I talked about where I turned a light pad upside down. And this is right off the scanner with no adjustments. So I could prove that I could have the light that was coming to the flower from below, and I could have a light, pure white light above shining down. And obviously this would need some adjustments in Photoshop, but coming right off the scanner, it proved to me that I would be capable of using it for that purpose. So that's that. You can also do some fun things. So this is actually a very small flower. I can't remember what it's called, but I don't know if it's a miniature daylily or what, but it's very small. So it was suspended so that it didn't crush on the glass. And that was my scanner with a few minor adjustments in Photoshop. But then I've learned a technique on LAB or lab color with inversion and hue mods. So now I can take that and create different variations on this. You'll see two different things that I did, but using that technique in Photoshop will give you lots of opportunities to do some fun things. Another one, I just did the inversion a little differently, popped it out. I mean, these inversions, I mean, they take a second, 2 seconds. Once you understand what they are to set them up, they're pretty simple. Then I wanted again to have a little bit of motion, so I took a couple of dead flowers and just put them in there, but you can see that if people think of things as florals that were like this, those things couldn't stay there. It would have been something you had to shoot at high speed, but here it's flat. It's not going anyplace, but you can give it the sense. But if I want to change the texture, if you look close, I won't go out and blow it up, but I wanted to get kind of a burlap color with a burlap texture. So I put that behind this. So even though it was shot like that in I think it was 2 layers, I put that on. It's pretty simple to do. Then I had this brilliant idea that I could take a photo I shot of the moon and I could lay that on top of the composition and get some interesting effects. Total failure. The reason was just because the moon was now sitting maybe 1.5 inches above the glass, the shape of the moon changed to a football and the color didn't look good, but because the light, everything had fallen off a little bit too much. So that was a failure. However, I decided to make a background from some of the texture in the moon and then use the lab color inversion to change the color from basically gold, because it's only this really small section here, and then put it as a background and worked on the background in one set of colors and the foreground object in a different set of lab colors. And So just interesting effects. Or find a background someplace. Use lap color to invert the flower and lay it in with the background behind it. So you can have a lot of fun playing with all kinds of things with this. It's kind of limited to your imagination. Then I said I wanted to start creating a little bit larger composition. So this is whatever they call it, society garlic or community garlic or something. I should have put the leaves behind the stems, which I discovered afterwards, but at least you get an idea that you start laying things across the scanner bed and you can determine whether they're going to be up here and have the ends not sunk here, or they can be laid here and have that be the natural border. So they're just laying off the side of the scanner bed. Or yet a little bit more complex, just starting to put things in. Then I said I'd like to shoot with reflective objects and see how well it works. So this was my first stab. That's like a porcelain vase, and it's very reflective of light. But I was able to keep it from getting too reflective, and then I fixed it a little bit in Photoshop. But you know, it's kind of like, why did this happen is a good logical question. Well, that bud is probably 2.5 to 3 inches actually behind this floral. So now when it's laid down on the glass, it's too far away. So the light's starting to fall off and the focus is starting to fall off. So I have two choices. Well, I have more than two, but two. I could just cut this off with a pair of scissors, or I could just take it out quickly in Photoshop. So I took it out quickly in Photoshop. But you can see that everything's in really nice focus, ready to do whatever I might want to do with it. I was just shooting around, just seeing the front and the back of a rose, what it looked like. Or you could start to create a story. This is obviously very small, but you know, with like a teacher speaking to students and using simple title cards to help imply to the viewer what it is you're seeing. I'm not doing any big ones here tonight, but I will show you this one and another one. So the big question would be is how could this have been done? Since some of these flowers don't point towards the glass, they point straight up. That's where scissors come in handy. So here's the flower that's the same flower as this, but if I take and I cut that flower off right at the base on the back and then lay it down on the glass, I'll get this view. They didn't, in this particular case, leave a stem to show, but it's there. Same thing with this one. But this one, they cut it and they put the stem up here just far enough so it can't be seen on the scan. And now you look like that floral's natural. I don't recall that type of flower. I think they did this one again and that one again, because if the flower's up shaped like this, it's not going to look good. You gotta put it down on the glass. This one is what got me thinking about that little porcelain vase. They've created something that looks like, whoops, like a concrete block or something, like a curb. They put something on there. They put 3 flowers in the thing, and they made this thing look like the light source was coming this way, and they put the little shadow in. So how did they do it? I'll show you. My last photo shows you something similar I did. I just used wood bars, and if I lay those down on the scanner bed, then they will they'll look like a tabletop. Or you could go out and get a brick and set it on there. And then you pretend like you're setting, because everything's flat, you pretend like you're setting the bowl on that. You're not. They're just beside each other on the glass. Set in 3 flowers. This has got a textured, so there's a cloth or something behind, which is my guess that they laid over the composition. But it's pretty easy to do, I discovered. And you can either put the lighting effect in afterwards, or maybe this entire composition wasn't shot here. And so you can play with that stuff in Photoshop. This is another one, you know, how would this one be done? Wow, darn. If I touch my mouse, it goes crazy. Some of these flowers, they don't act quite like that. So this flower up here is the same kind of flower as this. So you had to cut that one and lay it flat. You had to cut this one and lay it flat. So you can start to develop some fairly complex, much more, the guys I saw in California were doing infinitely more complex work than this, that I couldn't even figure out how they did it. And this one, look at the butterflies. There's 4 butterflies in here. There's a whole bunch of caterpillars in here. There's nothing that says that those, let's take the butterflies, for example, were actually even there during the scan. They could be butterfly pictures you took someplace else and you brought them in, composed them into the thing afterwards. I'm not quite sure how they did all these caterpillars, to be honest with you. But obviously you can do things to appear to be live or moving. And then these are my next several projects of things I have not yet done with scanography that I wish to do. So there's plenty more things I know I can do with this, as well as starting to use it as a bridge to the light pad and the translucent floral stuff, which is incredibly beautiful. So I wanted to show you a scan of how this actually comes off the scanner bed sometimes. And even though I cleaned the glass, I still got magnetic stuff out there. I didn't do any special settings, so I got it's a little bit washed out. But within a couple of moments in Photoshop, I had that. What's interesting is the name of this photo is Balanced, which should draw the viewer's eye as to the only thing it's touching is this one dead petal. Everything else is off. How could you possibly balance the weight of this on a dead petal? Well, I didn't. It's laid on its side so I can make it look like it's being balanced by something. So short of actually being able to show post-processing techniques, I don't know what time it is, but I was trying to stay in the hour, but that's kind of what I came prepared to show tonight.
Don, a couple of comments more than questions. Susan has said, I've never seen something like this. It's absolutely amazing. And Valerie is in here, and she's a person that I think sleeps with her camera. She's a landscape nature photographer, and she's always out. And she finds this really fascinating, and I think she might actually try this. So what blew me away, and you and I had talked about this when we met, was the resolution that the scanner is producing. And when you say you can print something or produce something large enough to cover a wall, I believe you. You know, this
is scan something up at 12 or 15,000 and then bring it down. And we all know the rules in photography. I mean, I'm a photographer. This was fun to do while you're sitting in your house and you can't go anyplace. Right. Or just occasionally I'll find something outdoors and it's interesting and I go clip and I come in here and I put it on there and I've got it. It takes nothing. But I'm a wildlife, nature, and landscape photographer. I mean, I do a lot of kinds, but that's where my heart is. But this takes up those moments that over the course of the last year, we've all had to learn the hard way. But down here in Texas, as long as I've lived here at least, winter usually isn't the most pretty spot to go out and shoot a lot of landscape, and there's not much in the way blooming. And so the things that I like to shoot just aren't there. I teach a class I call 11 things you can do with a $5 bouquet of flowers from HEB. And I can do a lot of interesting types of projects with just a couple of flowers. And this would be one of maybe 11. So I like to shoot. I like to be outdoors and hiking. And we used to have a couple places in the mountains and go hiking all over and do a lot of interesting stuff, but I can't do that anymore. So I'm always looking for projects that I don't have to traverse too far to be able to do them. But that's where my heart is in that type of photography.
And I think it's perfect for winter projects, keeping yourself inside and warm. So this is really fascinating. So I want to thank you for sharing your work and introducing us to a new form of art. If you guys are joining us for the first time, I'd like to invite you to check out my YouTube channel, Linda Nickell's Happiness Hour, where you'll find our previous sessions. And if you'll subscribe, you'll get notified when new sessions are added to the library. So next week, Michael Rung will be here to talk about setting goals to make good pictures. And until next time, go out and create something beautiful. And I hope that we see you again soon.